Welcome to the channel. He's the weapon. Subscribe to Modern Day Cons, Arm Wrestling, and my island, the island of Puerto Rico. In previous videos, I spoke about the only information that is available to any random person in regards to arm wrestling and in Puerto Rico. Let's continue with some more of my own story to then review outside sources to this discipline that is able to reach any common person, and how will that affect me, as how could it affect others as well. First, we recognize how arm wrestling is a proper subject to speak on to heritage and genetics. It's not just the strength muscles can provide through fast twitch muscles greater or lower, or depending on the ethnicity, but instead of only seeing muscle tissue as the only source, we are also able to include tendon power and frame into the subject. This will help us develop and to better accommodate the young prospects. We also would like to listen to what sports scouts have to say in the comment section, or anybody that can identify unquestionable talent. Can we appoint them to an institution that ensures this talent will be our champion? As I tell my story, we learn arm wrestling was present always, maybe in some groups where there's always one big student with a bulky like physique that never loses and always would use a technique that would bend your wrist completely. Along the story, there are many situations that are just like that. At the age of 15, I was beaten by this Uruguayan woman who was really strong. At the age of 15, I wasn't interested in arm wrestling, but had it been any other woman for except this Uruguayan, I would have won. Like I said, this family had something special in their genetics, in their genes. For instance, she is Rh negative. This means it's possible her blood type was alike ancient Canaanites and alike modern day Basques. It's not that I totally lost, I just couldn't budge her arm, like at all. If anybody asks, I wasn't interested in arm wrestling, so I speak about it not exactly because of legends such as Devin Lorette, although in the future, yeah, but or John Brzenk, or the famous YouTuber with a powerlifting background, Larry Wheels. You can say since I was a child, I saw John Brzenk in some shows back in maybe 90s and early 2000. The same I can say about admiring old Dennis the Plankoff content, as well like watching the strongman competitions. These would bring to me a lot of entertainment. The only times they would appear on TV or in some old internet video that would mention them. But in fact, the real reason I actually speak about arm wrestling is through Schoolboy. Through his viral arm wrestling videos is what made me think it was actually cooler. Beat this Schoolboy at arm wrestling and win some cash, but nobody could beat this baby-faced champion. I played soccer and I skateboard. I can naturally perform a high level in squats. I used to play baseball. But in squat, I was just a bit better than the average human being. But giving so much time to feet or my legs, I was not the best in push-ups. I added an arm wrestling type training to my arm workouts. And by just doing arm wrestling type training, I fixed my push-ups problem. And whatever amount I did, I can now maybe triple with the arm wrestling training alone. Also, my punching power and precision have dramatically increased as well. I have a friend who was a gamer for years, over a decade, but only having similar leg power as me, being also a skateboarder prior to that. I also recognize genetically is actually very flexible and has a strong core naturally, whereas at a young age my core was much weaker and my lower abdominals were many times less developed. It was only through intense work and time that I was able to reach a similar abdomen as he is. Being blood type O positive, by the way,
while mine's is B positive. Thus, this can mean his anatomy can also be straight from the indigenous Taino of Puerto Rico. That while I share similar ancestry, blood type O is rather of a Siberian caste, while B positive, Central Asian in origin. Therefore, are peoples with blood type B positive genetically more prone to be endomorphic, while Taino or indigenous Puerto Ricans are more prone to be ectomorphic. Ectomorphic. By this point, we can now observe that some ethno races may carry different genetic advantages that serve for different tasks. There are some ways that we may exploit the Puerto Rican physical advantages. My hands are small, but many others may share the same phenotype. My friend went to become a bodybuilder, whereas I was never a bodybuilder and had a maximum of 20 push-ups for reps. I did account with strong worker hands by this point, and with a little bit of this arm wrestling knowledge, I told him to arm wrestle me. It's arm wrestling in the air without a table. He budged my arm quickly sideways, as in with this total side pressure that I wasn't expecting. Sure, he was strong, but this time I was ready to employ technique. I said, let's go again. And when we pull our arms, I go and I take his hand. So the side pressure he did first pull did not work the second time. I stopped for safety as I pull hammer curl and he does too much side pressure not being arm wrestler. So there I knew I could pin him. And that moment he and I found out, even though he was a bodybuilder and had more bicep, I still had way more hand and wrist. So he said he didn't want to go again as he notices this. I do share that having more technique or more knowledge permits me to take the hand, especially if he doesn't know anything about arm wrestling. Just the usual common knowledge. So that's why I stopped. But I don't think I was going to actually hurt him. Sometimes you gotta be careful. I do attribute my hands to much hard labor. So I go on with my life and I train along as time passes. Some push-ups here, some wrist curls there. I was in a place where I would take the tables and I would wrist curl them. I made a friend from the north side of Puerto Rico and we were similar in sport and athletic energy. Eventually we reached the topic of arm wrestling. And as I grip his hand, I notice his hands are way more meatier than mine. He said he wrangles to the ground cows and bulls and other animals he works with all the time. He had a Spanish-like lineage and also physique, and his body was very suited to meaty strength. He wants to have an arm wrestling match, but I refuse to break his arm. I said no. I quickly teach him how to arm wrestle the safe way. So we have a little grip action. I was really hesitant, but even with all that, I know even trying to take his hand, he had me in a king's move palm up position. Even though he acknowledged my wrist power and my technique, I was in my mind secretly thinking, there's no way that I am taking this guy's hand. Even with all the training I had done, this guy just naturally has the genetics to even surpass my technique with no prior training. We were arm wrestling in that position and he was saying, come on, pull me. He knew. He was looking at me knowing I had one more move up my sleeve. And he was right. I did have one more move that could pin him. That is putting my weight on top of the top roll going below the table. But one, I did not want to push his arm abruptly. It could break. And two, I was honestly also doubting myself by how a man my own size has such a strong meaty hand and wrist. Yeah, I could have probably broken his humerus bone, so that's why I didn't top roll him by using all the energy I had left to also take his hand at the same time. Already realizing how dangerous this was after maybe like a 2-minute grip, I said, okay, that's enough. That's good. After maybe like a year and a half after this, I was able to practice the hook. So if it were to be myself now versus the shape that guy was in at that time, I'm now pretty sure I can take his wrist and be more in the center with more control, although I go King's move for his safety reasons. I'm pretty sure now I am able to snap his arm, maybe for sure. This is why every time I grip with somebody, I always try to think of his or hers or my own safety at the same time. Telling people to pull my arm the right way and without any abrupt surges that can cause or may cause an injury. It is also noteworthy to add that I also test people. When I greet a person and they know I am testing their power level, well, these tend to grip my hand harder. When we do the cultural grip greeting of men, whereas in some countries in East Asia, they bow their heads. As I test people, I tell them to pull my arm with their arm. Being these mostly bigger people than myself, they forget about the arm and push with their body weight and even push me towards them. But it is noteworthy to add that everybody to whom I've done this test to has not taken my hand, nor are they able to open my arm. But I'm lacking years of training. A video like this is not only made to acquire ideas and to record aspects of sports and athleticism through genetics that can help Puerto Rico in the future, but some of this knowledge can be seen to treat arm injuries through arm wrestling therapy recovery training. That from one discipline, we can also improve and further understand the mechanics of other athletic disciplines. When I add knowledge from other disciplines to one certain discipline that I am training, then the quality of my performance becomes much better. With this training, my hands and arms don't get injuries as much as they used to while being weaker. I can suddenly hold my own weight with my arms. I can hang with my hands longer than I used to. My punches are heavier and more precise. My grip, tighter. With this training, I can hold objects with one hand that otherwise I had to hold with two hands, only having over 2 decades of all sorts of sports under my belt. I think arm wrestling can even be very fitting for women, climbers, throwers, basketball players, and strong men and powerlifters. I do believe weak, tent-dwelling people can really benefit from the type of training as a tool to live life with better functioning arms. Otherwise, the general public can also maybe compete because of the longevity that arm wrestling is known to provide for men and women of all ages.